So I'm here today with an old friend of mine, Sam Weber. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you very much.
And we first met, I think it was in early 1990s, 93 possibly.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, and the company was the Amiga Group in Peterborough. Now, were you there already when I joined? I think you were.
Yeah, I was a fabricator.
Yeah.
So I joined them in about 1990.
Yeah.
And I'd spent 2 or 3 years there fabricating, and you pulled me out.
Pulled you out of the factory.
Pulled me out and put me on the path of the righteous.
Yeah. And how old were you then?
22.
22, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So Amiga Group was a window manufacturing business, and we went out on the road around the country, and with a small team. But I think we've both got some very good memories from the Amiga Group.
I think the Fit Show, when we met up with a few of the old faces,
yes,
we remembered stories that I think we'd parked quite a long time ago.
Yes, probably for the best.
But they were still incredibly funny, entertaining, and just reminded us what the industry was like at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And can I just ask, what was your favourite memory from the Amiga Group days? There's probably lots. I've got lots, but...
You got the business ones.
Yeah.
So obviously reflecting back on what you've learnt from the different businesses that you worked with. I don't know if you remember, but we had a brand called the British Security Window.
I do,
which
indeed.
would be very, a fond part of our sort of history.
Yeah.
And it kind of helped me at the time recognise the importance of marketing and being able to differentiate your product. Yeah. And at an early stage of 22, that was quite a pivotal time. I didn't realise it at the time, but you kind of realise afterwards how important that was.
And our customers loved it. They loved the brand. They loved the dealer concept.
Well, what we had, when everyone else was going for internally beaded, we actually had an externally beaded window. And we flipped it to say that actually it looked the most slimmest.
Yeah.
But we had something that locked the glass in.
Yeah.
So we dealt with all of the concerns and fears of the consumer whilst giving the installer probably one of the best looking windows.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
Sometimes you don't have to follow the pack.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to be true to what actually means something to the end user.
Yeah, absolutely. And we developed a door equivalent as well, British Security steel door. And that was quite interesting because that was very much in the early days of composite doors. And
I think from memory, there was 2 composite door suppliers at GlassX. One was Lindman and one was Sentinel. Yeah. And then we've got this wonderful door. And I just remember people literally coming up and touching it and what's it made of. And I was exposed to exhibitions really, really from a very, very young age. And I kind of thrived on it. Yeah. And my work experience was back in 1989 with Spectus.
Right.
My dad and 2 of the original owners of Amiga were Spectus profile salesmen. Yeah. And just recently I found an old certificate where he won an award for being the first £1 million worth of profile sales in 12 months. And you kind of remember those kind of stories and times. And you reflect back and realise that actually, because we've got grey hair, we're now referred to as industry veterans. But in actual, which is a bit of a struggle. But the journey started back at Spectus in 1989, really, for me. Yeah,
that's brilliant. I remember your dad so well, Derek, and there was something magical about that time in that industry and with those people, and with George and Rob who owned the business. They were certainly characters.
Yeah, I mean, even going to GlassX then, that was a huge exhibition. I think occupying 3 or 4 halls. Every profile house was up there, and there was a real buzz and energy that you can't really... Well, it's been replicated now with the Fit Show, but towards the end of GlassX, it almost seemed that innovation had lost its way. The industry had kind of lost its way because it was regurgitating the same products. Yeah. And every industry needs a bit of innovation. And, now we look at the Fit Show and it's all about innovation. It's all about how you can present your company. It's about marketing initiatives. It's about social media. It's not actually about physical products so much now. Yeah. It's actually about all the tangibles afterwards.
I think we learned some incredible life lessons at the Amiga Group that would set our group up. There was a small group office through the Amiga Group that all went on to do great things in very different ways.
Yeah. Yeah, we were speaking about that at the Fit Show with fond memories. And I mean, I suppose with every good company breeds good people. Yeah. And those good people tend to sort of manifest in different directions, don't they?
So we moved on from the Amiga Group, both of us, but our paths would cross again a couple of years later at Cambrian Windows.
Yep.
Yeah. And I went from the Amiga Group straight to Cambrian Windows. And that was a distressed business that was on the verge of going under at the time. We managed to turn it around and start to accelerate growth. And then you joined me there to help me do that and help me build the company and grow it very successfully.
Yeah, and I think moving away from Amiga and joining someone as big as the Epwin Group. So the Epwin Group were a PLC, probably one of the larger groups out there.
Yeah.
With lots of different brands, and I joined one of their relatively new brands, which was Quantel. At GlassX, there was only Ultraframe with their Mark I roof at the time. GB Wendell had come around at a similar sort of time.
Yeah.
So for me, being exposed to a much bigger corporate business was a perfect sort of stepping stone, really, because it gave me that kind of feel and understanding on how an individual brand works within a group of companies.
Yeah.
So, it's all about learning.
I remember the deal clincher for you coming to join me at Cambrian Windows was the Mercedes.
Yeah, I have to say, I can be bought. my price point was probably a bit lower than it needed to be.
From Cambrian, I went on and eventually launched Perplex, my marketing company. That was 21 years ago, which is now developed into a group of companies. And so I sort of pivoted more into marketing as a service. You stayed quite true to marketing as well as sales, but you really developed across the industry a number of key roles. What were they? Yeah,
so I moved on from Cambrian to Corby Window Group and spent some time there. And that's when I first experienced the pain and the success of a scaled up business. So when I joined them in 1999, they were turning over 9 million.
Yeah.
And by 2022, we were turning 22 million. 2 or 3 years later, we were turning over 22 million.
Yeah.
Now, we had acquired a manufacturing company which had the capability of 1,000 frames a week.
Yeah.
We'd moved into a multi-site business, so I kind of understood the pain and what worked and what didn't work there. But it was a really good introduction for me because I saw a very fast-moving business. After that, I worked with the VCs at Speedframe.
Yes.
So again, a much bigger, complex business, huge in new build. In fact, the largest supplier of UPVC windows in the new build. And my role there was to stabilise trade, but also to develop this trade and build a depot concept, which worked so successfully in conjunction with the strategy that we signed the first Solus deal with Barratt Developments for £16 million worth of windows.
Right.
I was very fortunate. I stayed in the same hotel as the turnaround VC team. So I learned an awful lot about what the expectation is of a turnaround business, what the key metrics are. But also I managed to study marketing at the same time. So staying in a hotel, I kind of flipped on its head and used to my advantage. And at the end of that, I got my first qualification with the Chartered Institute of Marketing.
Brilliant. Fantastic. But it was quite interesting because Speedframe was founded by Ian Harrison, who you obviously worked with while you were at Speedframe. And Ian Harrison was actually my first mentor in that industry because some years earlier to that, I joined a glass company called Rapide, and sister company was Saturn Windows, and it was all owned by Ian Harrison. Yeah. And so he took me on. And what was really interesting with Ian was that he had a frightening reputation. And he was somebody who was visionary, but didn't necessarily work well with a lot of people. And certainly me having conversations with him was very, very difficult. But he's seen something in me, which he obviously seen in you as well, because he very much took me under his wing and taught me the business, taught me the window business, extrusion business, the glass business. And I think that was instrumental in my future career. And you had similar experience?
Yeah, not? I think when you get to sort of my age anyway, you reflect back on the people that you've worked for. So I've never owned a business myself, but I've worked for lots and lots of entrepreneurs, and they've all got their key strengths, and some of them have got some weaknesses. And so when you spend enough time with people, you should really study what works for them and what hasn't worked. And then with that, you grow experience. And then when you join another company, you can say, well, actually, we're doing the same thing. We don't need to make the same mistakes. And I think with Ian, he revolutionised the industry. He started the first what I call super fabricator with Saturn.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of the sales guys from Spectus that used to stay with us, a guy called Mike Smith from Washington, he was one of the first salesmen for Saturn windows.
Yeah.
Now that didn't succeed, but what did succeed was Speedframe, and what Ian introduced into the industry, which was visionary, which was 7-day windows.
Yeah.
You order on a Tuesday at 12 o'clock, you get them the following Tuesday.
Yeah.
Now, the industry hadn't a demand for that or a need for that. No one was asking for that, but he created that opportunity. And so, therefore, the whole industry had to change.
Well, it was interesting because at Cambrian Windows, that was the model that I had seen. So when I joined Cambrian Windows, nobody else was doing 5-7 day turnaround. Everybody was on 3 weeks with the exception of Speedframe. And I looked at what they were doing and I thought, you know what, if I can replicate that strategy, we're going to scale and we're going to grow. And we managed to do it. And we were able to do that because at that point at Cambrian, you know, the business was on the verge of closure. It had lost a massive, its biggest customer. So it had a lot of capacity, huge capacity, but no volume. So we were able to re-engineer the factory, totally reinvent it to allow us to do a 5-day or a 7-day turnaround, which effectively replicated what Speedframe were doing. And as a result of that, Cambrian then grew from 1 million to 12 million. I think it was in about 3.5 years. So it's phenomenal. But Ian's got to take the credit for that because he invented the concept originally.
Yeah, and even some of the ideas that he had, I mean, some of the marketing ideas, you know, it was very joined up. You know, not everything worked, and maybe that's down to some of the staffing decisions and whatever else. But, you know, he developed the first cavity closer and sold it to the John Carr Group.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you're aware of this, but I was part of the team that brought that to market. So back in the day of Saturn Windows, he invented Press Lock, and eventually it became John Carr Press Lock. So I was the one going around all the Jewson's builders merchants pitching it. And a really interesting story here. We won the contract for Jewson's, and it was a huge opportunity. And Press Lock was put into lots of merchants, and we created a display. A unit went into the store. And, you know, I was running around the country doing all this type of stuff and we didn't sell any. And what I realized that we'd created, or Ian had created this great product, I brought it to market, I put it into the merchants, but the customers didn't know what it was. So the builders were walking into the merchants and looking at this thing and not really understanding what it was. And then, so we thought, look, you know, this strategy isn't working. So then we went to the merchants, to the branch managers and saying, right, you know, you need to get out and sell this. And they're saying, well, look, this is one of 10,000 SKUs. We've got a huge product range. Why would we be interested in selling that one? And that's when we started going direct to the builders. So it was an interesting learning experience.
Yeah, and I think even towards the end of my time with Speedframe, one of the businesses or sections of Speedframe that was losing money was their foiling plant.
Right, yeah.
But what he recognised, but he just hadn't really got the sort of marketing perception of it, was people want colour.
Yeah.
But he had like 15 colours like tangerine orange and reds and stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, now we've got the colours that the consumer wants.
Yeah.
But he saw that years before, maybe even a decade before colour became really prevalent in UPVC. Yeah. So again, you've got to think sometimes, you know, I meet with suppliers all the time that tell me, well, we're only doing 2% of that. Yeah. So that means it's not popular. And sometimes you just need to put your balls out really and say, well, actually, let's create that demand.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, with my time at CWG, you know, Jason was a phenomenal production guy. Yeah. You know, probably the most experienced because nothing was a no. You know, he made things work. So I remember in 2000 at GlassX, we launched the first mass-produced PVC bifolding door. Yeah. The aluminium door wasn't a thing at the time. So there was no SEO for bifolding doors. Yeah. There was no one saying we need a bifolding door. Yeah. It was Ray Howe gave us a bag of bits. He made it, and then we put a five door one at GlassX, and it was like a showstopper. We literally had queues of people, but there was no demand for it. And then we had the whole logistical nightmare of delivering it and working out some SOPs on how we now deliver it and what the expectation is from the installer. But we had a vision for it. Now, that is a classic production-orientated business. Yeah. Whereas with a marketing-orientated, you would find out if there's demand, a need, you know, price point, is that worth making? Can we make money out of it? Yeah. But he didn't. He just did it.
Yeah.
and created the market.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that everyone followed suit,
Yeah.
but they kind of did.
Yeah. Well, sometimes, somebody's got to lead, somebody's got to create the demand. If it's a new product to market, somebody's got to take that lead and do it. And I think actually creating a category or creating demand for a product is a game changer. And it's not the first time you've done that.
No. So after Speedframe, I kind of knew I'd qualified in marketing. I wanted to get back into a little bit more mainstream trade supply.
Yeah.
Speedframe was being packaged up to sell.
Yeah.
So my job was kind of going to be redundant anyway, because they didn't really want to pursue trade as it was.
Yeah.
And I'd kind of helped set up the trade and build a depot concept. So I joined a relatively small company in comparison called Evolution.
Yeah.
And Evolution were a couple of years into their kind of timber alternative product. It was an Eclipse window. It was white wood grained. I know the challenge that Surjit and Richard had just trying to persuade somebody to foil a white profile with white wood grain, because it wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
And why would someone pay 20 or 40% more for a product where you can't even see it until you're close up to it? And then they started challenging us on why are we doing mechanical joints. So we called them a timber style joint.
Yeah.
Because guess what? We kind of redefined the casement window market with a product that sat between UPVC, mass-produced UPVC and timber.
Yeah.
And we created the first timber alternative casement window.
That was a whole product category.
Absolutely. And what I learned then was, in a recession, which was the subprime mortgage recession, which was huge, and it was a global recession, I noticed companies that were doing really well with our Evolution in relative terms, with a really expensive product that was twice the price of a normal PVC window, but it was packaged properly, it was marketed properly, and it was kept exclusive by authorised dealers.
One of our clients at Perplex, actually, a long-standing client, was P&P.
Oh.
And we worked with them for many years before he sold the business, and they were obviously a huge dealer.
Well, I think with anything like that, what you do is you go to the companies geographically. So I chose about 4 or 5 companies that were doing enough of it so that it was a regular feature of their product portfolio, and trying to understand why they were being successful with it and how could I replicate that across the country. So we naturally, a lot of our Evolution dealers were master frame bygone dealers, because Alan Burgess had done the same with the sash window. So we filled a need for those customers. But also I noticed that timberwindows.com, their early business model was having two windows, a stormproof and a flush window. And they aimed to get that into 200 showrooms around the country. And I had the privilege of working with a company called Artisan, who were based up in Denbighshire, but opened up their first dedicated timber showroom in Nether Alderley.
Okay.
And it didn't quite work out. They weren't quite selling the numbers to make it viable. So we introduced Evolution.
Yeah.
But that kind of pioneered Chris Brunsden to set up dedicated timber showrooms.
Yeah.
So sometimes your strategies don't always work, but you can't give up, because ultimately his idea was hugely successful. And they're probably the most successful retail timber company now, and obviously he sold that many, many years ago. But we naturally saw that if you sell timber, you're going to get an interest in something that's timber alternative.
Yeah.
So when I joined CWG for the second time, and they were the first manufacturers of residence, obviously Dan Gill had seen the success of Evolution and kind of inspired him to design a whole game-changing brand of products called Residence Collection.
Yeah.
And that was off the basis of, a relatively small fabricator called Evolution.
Yeah.
And I think with that then, what you can see is I thought, well, I need to get my customers, my retail installers, to start offering timber, which is something they didn't want to do. And the reason being is because a certain type of customer is going to search for timber. Okay, they wouldn't even search or consider UPVC.
Yeah.
Okay, they're not looking for a timber alternative because they don't realise it exists. But what happens is they get the price point and it probably is outside of their remit.
Yeah.
Or they can't quite get the amount of windows done at the same time. And all of a sudden, what's this? It's a timber alternative.
Yeah.
Oh, what's that made of? And then the salesperson can go in and sell. And that's worked as a strategy for me,
100%. I mean, it's a classic strategy of a lot of product manufacturers, car industry use it, etc., where you have, Audi has an R8. Suddenly, the framing of R8's of Audi is completely different now. So, an A5 is great because you've got that aspiration of an R8. So, it's a great strategy. I'm thinking the window, we've been involved in that industry for 30 plus years.
Afraid so.
And the one thing that I observe is it is an industry of entrepreneurs, and it fascinates me how companies and products have constantly rebuilt themselves, how they've re-emerged, how they have reinvented themselves over the years.
Yeah, I think the big change was 2013 when the first Fit Show arrived, and the amount of innovation that had happened in a relatively short period of time. You know, from residence, flush windows, acoustic became very, prevalent, and many others. High-end hardware. You know, who would have thought you'd buy a casement window handle for 60 quid, right? Mark it up and sell that to a customer. Well, if they've got the money, they will buy that. You know, and more recently, before I joined where I am now, I spent 16 months with a retail company. In Sussex.
So in that retail business, did you adopt that good, better, best approach with product offerings?
We had 5 flush windows. Now that's complicated, and you might think that's weak selling. But what we had is we had our main supplier that had a really good brand and, pretty decent window. Then we had almost like a slightly better, more authentic version of that. And then we had the residence collection.
So what's your view then on, so many companies having this approach of race to the bottom on retail? I want to sell it as cheaply as I can to get the order. What are they doing wrong?
They don't understand their customers' needs because you can't ever be the cheapest. We've probably spoken about this many times, and I've had thousands of conversations over the years. Price has never been, ever. Every company I've worked for, we've never been the cheapest. So how have I sold that particular brand? When I worked for CWG, we certainly weren't the cheapest Rahal manufacturer. We certainly weren't the cheapest Commerling. But why did we win that business? Because, I'll give you an example. I dealt with 5 different companies in Brighton, where I live. Okay. Collectively, they spent about £1.2 million. And you'd think, well, I'm overselling in the area. But they all wanted something different from us. They all sold in the same market to the same demographics of people. But I understood each company and what they needed and what they weren't getting from their current supplier. And that's the reason to change. And it wasn't about price. Never has been.
This is an industry of 12 or 13,000 businesses, and they've evolved from an ex-fitter background, fabricator background, or sales background. And they don't know about business necessarily, and so many salespeople don't know their products. They haven't had any professional training, and somehow it's still a multi-billion-pound industry. Could you imagine what it could be if we raised all of those standards?
It's just it's just working on the small bits, working on those quick wins, and then you build on that and you build on that. The trouble is, too many people see the big target. And that's fine. If you want to get from 1 million to 5 million, that's absolutely great. You look at the £5 million target, but then you work back and you stop focusing on the 5 million because it's too far away. You now focus on, what am I going to achieve in the next 3 months? What am I going to achieve in the next 6 months? And I've, taken that on board from the expeditions that I do. It's all about, actually, yes, you need to know where your destination is. You need to know where your starting point is, and the pathway is going to meander, but you've got to stay focused on the strategy. Right, you've got to adapt it when it needs adapting, but you've also got to revisit it, constantly revisit and measure. Actually, we've made a little bit of progress. This month we haven't. Why didn't we? Okay, well, let's see if we don't want to repeat that. And nobody seems to take that into their business. And salespeople now, just sell at companies. They don't sell to them. They don't try and understand them. They don't ask the questions. And that was a big eye-opener for me, thinking, well, I don't want to be that person that says to that sales guy, well, I used to do your job, and be that cliched. But it was a concern.
So it is interesting because, while Perplex is a marketing company, obviously I've got a background like yourself of running fabricators and installation businesses. And I end up as a consultant to so many of our customers on their business strategy, not their marketing. And in fact, next year is something I'm going to take a little bit more time to do. And actually, I'm going to run some seminars to help businesses actually build out their business strategy, their sales strategy, their operational strategy, and financial strategy as well, because very few business owners in our industry understand finance. So that's going to be a big key thing for me for next year. But you touched on something there, which was your expeditions. Now, over the last 20 or 30 years that we've known, 30 years that we've known each other, I've always been a big fan of personal development, and I have pushed myself into learning and seminars and books, and I've read, all the top books. You've done similar, but you've taken it to a whole new level by turning it into reality and going on some crazy adventures. Do you want to just talk to me about that? Well, how did you get an appetite for that?
I sort of fell into it with my wife, who's got a personal training business, and we started to do the Tough Mudders.
Yeah.
And we raised £1,000, and I didn't even know what the charity was.
Yeah.
And I thought, here I'm training for something. We're doing something as a team, and we're actually doing some good.
Yeah.
And then what turned it into something more significant is one of my best friend's brother served 25 years in the SS, and towards the end of his career, he started to become a polar explorer. And in 2018, he embarked on a solo, unsupported traverse of Antarctica. And up until then, that was one of the last bastions in exploration that hadn't been achieved. And in fact, one of his friends who was a major in the SAS had failed and died doing it in 2016. So I was following his expedition, listening to his text messages that were relayed by his expedition manager.
Yeah.
And here's somebody I've known since I was about 15, who's been in the military all his life. Coming towards the end, he's been in combat zones, and now he's putting his life on the line for the sake of exploration and pushing yourself, pushing the boundaries. And there was a point where he fell down a crevasse, and the pulk that he was towing fell on his back, and he thought he was done.
Yeah.
Anyway, he ended up doing it, and I literally had a bit of a moment, and I booked Kilimanjaro. And about 6 weeks later, with not sufficient training, I'm now going out to Tanzania. Summiting and mounting is quite special, and I really got the bug.
Yeah.
And while I was out there, I met somebody that his brother had just been to the Amazon rainforest and done a military-grade jungle survival course. And so 2 weeks after I got back, I had to announce to my boss and my wife that I'm now going to be flying out to South America for 17 days on a harebrained idea of doing a jungle survival course with an Amerindian tribe and an ex-SS officer. And it's not even something you can Google. So she just thought I was completely mad.
Yeah.
But what it did do is it taught me, because it was a military-grade survival course, it taught me the do's and don'ts, the myths surrounding survival, the whole Amazon adventure, the myths surrounding the creatures, how to make camps, how to use what nature has given you.
Yeah.
And then the ultimate thing at the end was, after I'd learned all of the survival skills, you get put into an isolation phase where you put those into practice. So you're taken even further into the jungle, bearing in mind we're 300 miles away from civilization.
Yeah.
And you are then put on the side of the river with your basic survival kit.
Yeah.
And you've got to survive for either 3 days and 2 nights or 4 days and 3 nights.
Okay.
And it's terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll be honest.
Yeah.
So I came back from that. I raised about $9,000 for some charities, and I absolutely loved it. Then I was going to be doing a Canada expedition that failed because of COVID. When I got back, I then climbed the highest mountain in the southern western hemisphere called Aconcagua.
Okay.
Sadly, I got altitude sickness and had to come down. So that was a failure in a way.
Yeah.
But again, gave me a great experience.
Yeah, it's turning you into the adventurer that
Something
you are
like
today.
that, but you learn from every single experience. And then more recently, a whole life-changing experience, which has genuinely changed my life, which was a 3,000-mile row across the Atlantic Ocean.
I remember getting the call saying, Andrew, I want to come and see you. I'm going on an adventure. I want to sponsor.
And you did. You kindly, like so many other people in the industry. Yeah, I mean, just to give you an idea, it's 2 years worth of training.
Yeah.
It is a serious expedition.
Yeah.
You are unsupported. You are on your own in a small rowing boat, rowing 3,000 miles. The training is absolutely first class, but you are learning your equipment, your kit, team dynamics, conflict management, and safety and all the other drills. And so even though you're training for 2 years in the off the coast of Weymouth in our case, nothing prepares you for what Mother Nature's got and Mid-Atlantic.
Okay.
We encountered a huge capsize in the middle of the night. I was thrown overboard with one of my colleagues
That must have been
in 25 foot waves.
Terrifying. And I'm guessing, what was the temperature?
What
was the water temperature?
It wasn't cold. I mean, that was one of the things when I was hanging in the water with 8.5 kilometres of sea below me. One was, this is where I'm going to die.
Yeah.
The other thing was a conversation I had with a friend of mine in a pub in Brighton where I foolishly said I would like to see how I'd respond in a capsize at night.
Yeah.
And here I was experiencing a capsize at night. But also the next 24 hours changed my life.
Yeah.
Because we also found out during that capsize that we'd flooded one of the cabins.
Right.
So we'd lost a whole load of equipment.
Goodness.
Which made our row even more challenging. So we lost carbon fibre oars, foot plates. We lost all of our steering mechanisms except for one, which was just 2 rows. So we basically navigated the last 2,900 miles with 2 pieces of rope attached to the rudder, as well as multiple equipment failure.
Yeah.
So when people talk about resilience and conflict management and, all of those team dynamics things that we all experience in work and all sorts of different environments, the Atlantic Ocean is a very unforgiving place to live those out.
So that must create a huge sense of camaraderie amongst that group of people, a bond that is unrelinquishing. But I guess it's also given you some skills and an attitude that you've been able to take back into the workplace.
Massively.
Yeah.
So obviously if I take the new challenge that I've taken on, so I've joined UKO Group, which is a relatively new group of companies.
Yeah.
We've got 5 brands and I'm the group sales director. So I literally agreed to join Andrew Glover, who is very well known in the industry, and Natasha Erskine, his partner. We agreed to join before I went on the row, and the only thing he said to me is, please don't die. And when we capsized, he kind of got a little bit angry when I spoke to him on the sat phone and said, I asked you one thing, please don't die. But when I joined, I'd just come back from the row, a complete life-changing experience. And now I'm living in Yorkshire 3 to 4 days a week, putting together strategies for 5 separate businesses, all under the umbrella of a group. We have this boardroom strategy, which is called Pathway to 50 million. So we've got to deliver a business that's currently turning over about 16 million to 50 million in about 5 years' time. And when you break that down into each individual business and then put a strategy into that, it's the most exciting, exhilarating journey. But absolutely, have I taken some of the key ingredients that I've taken from the row and my other expeditions without question. Team dynamics, conflict, although there's not really been any conflict, but there are people with different opinions, different views, and we've all got to manage that with empathy, and working together.
Yeah. And I'm just interested your views on, how you learn to manage members of your team who may not be as resilient, or, we live in an age now where there's a high level of expectation, and it's very difficult, particularly if you've got young people in your business.
Do you know what? It's an interesting thing because you just go back to human instincts. Okay, everybody's human. You don't know how somebody's feeling that particular day when they turn up to work. So what we might think is harmless banter because we said it the week before might actually be a particular problem. Now that was manifested on the boat. So we needed stuff to be done quickly. Okay, because there's a change in weather or there's some waves or whatever else. But you've got to understand that person might have had a really bad day. They might really miss their family. They might not have had the right sleep that day. They might be absolutely exhausted. They might be regretting being on that boat. So in work, I suppose I treat people now with, instead of, I've never been barking orders, I've never been a micromanager, but I look at people and I kind of think, well, actually, before I engage with this particular conversation or trying to put through across my point of view, let's hear them first. Because if they tell you what their point of view is or how they're feeling, not necessarily how they're feeling, but you can tell everything you need to know. It's a bit like selling. Selling is not about talking, it's about listening. And people would tell you all you need to know.
Definitely.
To adapt your sales pitch. And I suppose dealing with people is all about adapting to that particular person, how they're going to fit in with the team. The first people with recruitment now is, are they going to fit in with my team? Have they got the skills? Yes, that's a given. Right. But are they going to fit? Are they going to add to our team? For salespeople now, are they going to add to our brand? Are they going to add, are they going to add to the person they're going to go and see?
So I developed a formula, methodology many years ago called SAM, funnily enough, which stands for skills, attitude, and momentum. I've been doing some training on it today, actually, with some businesses. And I asked people to score themselves out of 100 on skills. So skills might be technical skills, but it might be communication skills, timekeeping. So skills, the same with attitude. Have you got whatever it takes attitude? Are you going to help other people? Are you going to go out of your way for your customers? So that kind of attitude piece. And then the last one is momentum, which is action, speed, and direction of travel. Are you going in the right direction? And I developed a formula which I call my Millionaires Club. And, if you score 100 on skills, 100 in attitude, 100 momentum, 100 times 100 times 100 is a million. So it's my Millionaires Club. So it's only a bit of fun, but it really demonstrates how, if somebody is a 50 and a 50, they don't get half the result. So 50 times 50 times 50 is 125,000. So it's a tenth of the result. So those differences, that makes a big difference. So one of the things I'm really passionate about is upskilling skills, but also attitude and also momentum, how fast people operate and the action they take.
The thing is, I suppose I look at, you always work back to your experiences. I remember working on the factory floor at Amiga, just as a fabricator. And we had a great guy called Dobbsy, and he was a brilliant sawman. And so naturally, they wanted to promote him to a supervisor.
Yeah.
He didn't want to be a supervisor.
100%.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we take it for granted. So I talk to people in the factories all the time. I remember at Evolution, I used to do a presentation to every single new fabricator that started. Yeah. I took them into the showroom and I kind of educated them on what we are as a business. They might have made PVC windows before, but this is different. Our customer's expectation is different. Yeah. So I now knew that everybody that came into that business had an equal understanding of who we are as a business and what we're trying to achieve. Yeah. And I suppose now when I go around the 5 different factories that we have, and we have UK Doors Online, I think the 3rd largest bifolding door supplier, but again, because of the kind of range of customers they've gone for, they're a bit under the radar. So we've got Trade Window Centre, a great PVC company that's got oodles of potential for scaling up, which we've got some really exciting plans between now and Christmas. We've got UK Roof Lights and Lanterns, which is a relatively new business. We've got some unbelievable innovative products coming out again in about 6 weeks' time. And then we've got UKO Glass. We've got some other brands as well, Quad, which is a business that just attracts and goes into builders merchants, which we're working really, really well on the strategy on that. And that's going to really develop really nicely over the next coming months. But what I do is I go into each of the companies. So when I first joined them, I needed to understand each of the businesses, where they were or where they thought they were. So you talk to the senior managers and you get an understanding. And then you sit down and you speak to the middle managers, and then you go around the factory and you talk to people. And, the great thing about a growing business, especially with ours, that entry-level fabricator, what do you want to do? Where do you see yourself in 2 years' time? No one's ever asked him. But actually, if you apply yourself and you work really well, you could be a team leader. You can be a, production manager. You can be whatever you want to be.
Attitude, momentum.
Absolutely. And if you give people that understanding, they still might decide, I only want to be a fabricator, or I'm just happy doing my admin job. But also, I want to unlock that potential. My son's 20 now, and I want people to do the same to him. You start off here, but if you apply yourself, this is where you could end up, and there's nothing stopping you.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to take a small segue to some of the figures that you mentioned, your pathway to 50 million. And now we're in an economy at the minute which is being talked down. There's lots of challenges. We've got tax rises apparently coming everywhere. The economy is looking gloomy, and in the industry that we're in the window and door industry, it has contracted over the last couple of years. What gives you the confidence to believe that you can build a business up to 50 million in all of those circumstances?
Okay. The one thing is understanding our customer base and who we're trying to attract. So I suppose unless you're a complete idiot, if you spent 30 years in the industry supplying various different products with various different types of companies, you kind of should understand that particular dynamic.
Yeah.
Okay. You then factor in all of the companies out there that have never really adapted or changed. They're in the same business model, doing the same things that they did 30 years ago. Yeah. So I think having a fresh company with a new identity, with a real focused strategy, we're not doing anything else. A bit like, what I said about those companies in Brighton. They're all selling in the same area. Yeah. Why are they all successful? Yeah. Why are they all doing really well? Because they've adapted to a slightly different segment. So I think our growth is going to come from innovation, clear marketing message, who we are, what can you buy off us, why should you buy? We've also got the advantage of probably one of the best pricing and ordering software systems, which has been developed by ourselves.
Right, great.
So it's not one of the recognised brands that is a bit of a one cap fits all. This is specifically built around our products, and it is the quickest and easiest software system. So that makes it easier to deal with us.
Yeah.
It means there's less opportunities for people to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And when you're growing a retail business or a trade counter business and you're recruiting, you're not recruiting people with window industry experience.
Yeah.
You're recruiting people that generally you've got to train and upskill very quickly.
Yeah.
Well, if the fundamental software that is going to choose what you quote and make it stupidly easy and idiot proof,
Yeah.
then you're going to make less mistakes.
Yeah.
And so adding that together with the failures of other businesses,
Yeah.
you know, the weakness of the sales teams out there, the lack of understanding,
Yeah.
and just the fact that everyone's talking doom and gloom. I'm not.
Yeah.
You know, that's just a bit of noise. Don't get me wrong, I'm not arrogant or conceited to say that doesn't make a difference, because it does.
Yeah.
But, you know, you have a range of products that deals with, you know, the entry level, somebody who's on a low budget that wants a white PVC window. You want something that wants to upgrade to a nice timber alternative. You
Yeah.
want something that's going to be, you know, even better. And then what you're doing is you're future-proofing your business.
Yeah.
So innovation for the sake of innovation doesn't work, but we're coming out with products that are going to make people's lives easier on the installation side
Yeah.
and engage with what the consumers want.
It's interesting because one of the basic laws of business is make it really easy for customers to do business with you. But we're in an industry where we actually seem to make it quite difficult sometimes.
Look, even being with that retail company, we had some phenomenally professional window companies,
Yeah.
but they just haven't invested in software.
Yeah.
So you're going around, you're going out to see a job, or someone comes in the showroom, you've then got to email across, scan something, email it across, wait for a couple of days before you can even do it. If you look at any other industry, you know, even kitchens, you know, you've got design software. So our industry is, I mean, I remember working for CWG back in 1999,
Yeah.
and Jason and Philip saw the importance and the opportunity of software. So we actually had an IT person that went
I
out on the
remember
road,
that. Yeah.
which was Nick Rudd.
Super Highway.
Super
was it
Highway.
called? I remember that.
And he went out writing mat lists for people.
Yeah.
Right, and that was 1999. We were actually buying computers on people's behalf and teaching them how to operate a computer. Okay, it hasn't really moved on. It has, but it hasn't. You know, so I think with us, you've got to give someone a reason to change. Okay, and if we've got similar products at similar prices, because we can't undercut everybody, but we can make your life phenomenally easier.
Yeah.
And it's our software.
Yeah.
So it's not somebody else can't copy our software. That's the reason to change.
Yeah.
Or we're coming out with things that we're embracing trends. So like I say, some of the exciting stuff that we've got coming out, it's going to change the industry.
Yeah, 100%. I think a lot of the time it's about doing business better, not necessarily about the product. Because in an industry where products are similar, they're not identical, but they're very similar, then the differential is how you actually do business.
Someone told me, a very wise man called Edward Burgess, one of my Evolution dealers, and he said, "You sell the sizzle, not the sausage."
100%.
Right, and if I, you know, that is something that's resonated with me throughout all. You know, when I sold retail or when I got the opportunity, it was never about the product. It was about how we're going to change your house, how we're going to change the curb appeal of your property, how we're going to enhance your life, whether it's acoustic. I remember selling a job where I'd done a Google Street View, and so the customer came in and they ended up with a timber alternative, but I noticed on their Street View they had a school at the back of their garden. So straight away I added acoustic glass at the back. Nobody. No other window company, and she'd got 5 quotes, that even remotely.
Yeah, really interesting.
So just simple little things.
So, So to the future, so, you know, I'm thinking I've been running Perplex now for 21 years, and I've seen a lot of change in that time. And for me, what I've also seen is my competitors come and go. So over that 20, you know, Perplex is still going strong. It's growing every year. We've got not quite pathway to 50, but we've got some very ambitious plans over the next few years. We've set up an AI department, AI team, automation teams, and we're investing hugely in the business to continue to grow and scale. Where do you see the future for the industry, first of all?
I think if it doesn't get more professional, and when you've got salespeople out there and there's no real training for them, you know, I mean, we're recruiting at the moment, and I've got a very firm idea on who I want representing our brand.
Yeah.
And what I don't want is a salesperson out there that doesn't add value to us. So even if the customer doesn't, or the prospect doesn't end up buying from us, I want them to say to me at the Fit Show in 2027, "Oh, crikey, your guy came in. What a nice guy. Not successful." I want someone to say to us, "Right, okay, you weren't successful now, but can we be the number one company you ring if something should happen with your supplier?"
Absolutely.
So I think training and the importance of training, understanding people's skill sets, their strengths and weaknesses, managers being better managers. I suppose from a manufacturing point of view, and even suppliers, I mean, we're looking around for different suppliers. We've got quite a diverse product portfolio. And it's interesting how many suppliers aren't engaged with where the future trends are.
Yeah.
They're just concerned in the here and now.
Yeah.
We're looking at what our supply partners have got in terms of innovation, new ideas, where they see the trends for the next 12 to 24 months, because that has a massive impact on our ability to grow.
Yeah.
So we look at suppliers in a completely different light. And when I talk to installers, I said, do you financially check your window manufacturers?
Yeah.
You should be credit checking everybody.
So it's interesting. I think you know this, but PERPLEX is an acronym, and it stands for Purpose, Plan, Execute. And that's the business model that I've applied to our own business and our own group of companies, and also all the clients that we work with, all the customers that we work with. And one thing that I observe is very few businesses have got a clear purpose. They haven't got a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan, or they're not clear in what it looks like when it's finally done. Not just size-wise, but, what's your market position? What's your plan to exit? Is this going to be a legacy business that your family own for the next 50 years, or are you planning to exit? The vast majority of businesses don't know that in our industry.
No. And when you talk to people about their businesses, they start off because, like you say, they were a fitter, a surveyor, or a salesman that either thinks they can do it better, have been shafted by their bosses, or whatever the reason is. But every single person in our industry has worked probably for somebody. There's very few that literally leave school and set up a business. So therefore, why have they started? Have they ever asked themselves a question? What are their aspirations? Now, some of them have got some great ideas. I want to get to 5 million. Absolutely fine. What's going to happen at 5 million? How are you going to get to 5 million? What products do you need? The first thing I set out with Andrew and Natasha is my synopsis of what product portfolio, what additional products do we need to reach the kind of customers that we want to attract? And so we're addressing that. We're not a brand that people have known about for 30 years. So we're kind of redefining ourselves. But we've got an appetite, we've got a really good, strong foundation. And all I know about businesses, from whatever I've learned from people, if you've got a good foundation, you can generally build. It's when people build on stuff, anyone can grow a business, but it will fall over. And I've been in businesses that have fallen over because they want to grow for the sake of growing. They haven't got the foundations. And I think looking out at some of our competitors now, they kind of lost their way. They are talking doom and gloom. It is all negative. We're talking growth. Now, I don't,
So it's interesting, the conversations I'm having with lots of business owners is margins are being squeezed, average order values are going down. It's getting tougher to convert leads into customers. So this is the daily narrative across the industry.
I think the other thing is, and this is the biggest importance, and it seems obvious to anybody really, but the importance of knowing your numbers, right? And knowing where your margin products are. If you've got a factory floor, what is actually cost effective on that factory floor? Are you making products just for the sake of products, or are those making more money or less money? And it's the same principle with retail companies. So many don't know. I went into a company fairly recently, and I helped them start up. It was a father and son. They're 10 years in and they're doing really, really well, but they've never put their prices up. So when I revisited them under my new sort of banner, first thing I said was, you got premises now? Have you put your prices up? Well, no. I said, how's your order book? Oh, we're absolutely flat out till November. Okay, fine. Put your price up 20%. Not necessarily fitting, but put your prices up. They've done that. I went to go and see them a couple of weeks ago. They've done that, and it's had no impact on their order book. So now they're making 20% more margin just because they've done that.
Yeah. I'll never forget a few years ago seeing an installation business that were selling like crazy. The sales coming in the door were phenomenal. The pipeline was huge, and yet they were losing money, and they couldn't understand why they were losing so much money. And it took me about 10 minutes, and it would have taken any external person looking at it 10 minutes to realize the reason you've got a huge pipeline is you're selling it, but you're not fitting it. And you're only getting paid when you fit it. So, but on their metrics, we're selling 100,000 a week. We've got £1 million pipeline, but you're not fitting anything. You're selling 100,000 a week. You're only fitting 20,000 a week. So that's why you're losing money. So just to round up, what does the next few years, well, let me ask you, what does the next 10 years hold for Sam?
So obviously we've got this pathway to 50.
Yeah.
We're just about to announce our proper sales strategy to the board of directors and then filter that out through the business. We've got some really exciting products. So I think between now and Christmas is going to be hugely exciting for us.
Yeah.
For me, I keep reminding people of how much they've achieved in the last few months, because when you're working in the trenches, as it were, you don't see the here and now. And when you reflect back to people, especially young teams that are now, we've got customer service now, which is group customer service. We've got a great person who runs that called Stacey. And when you stop and speak to her and say, this is what you've achieved in the last few months, or, with Ella Glover, for instance, she's introducing a new CRM system. That's a big project. It's, you stop and smell the coffee.
Yeah, definitely.
And just look at what we've achieved and remind people that we're doing really, really well. We're still very far from where we want to go. In terms of personal development, I live in Yorkshire. I live in Brighton, but I travel to Yorkshire every Monday. So I have 4.5 hours in the car. So I listen to an awful lot of podcasts and audio books. I'm also now following a public speaking journey. So I'm hopefully going to get my first TEDx talk in the next 3 months. And that's, sharing some of the trials and tribulations with my expeditions and how that fits into people's everyday lives and their, work or emotional or whatever. So that's a nice little sort of sub thing to work on.
Can you see that as a new career in the future when you achieve your pathway to 50?
I don't know. I mean, I've just signed up for another expedition, which is a 1,000-mile endurance canoe race, which is the longest one in the world with my son, which hopefully if that comes off is next year. There is talk of me potentially doing a solo traverse of Antarctica, maybe in 2028, 2029, or rowing the Atlantic solo. So what that would do for me is take it to another level, but also, so you've got a really exciting career, really exciting expedition journey, but also the public speaking and sharing that story with people is really...
And it's hugely satisfying. It's hugely impactful. Absolutely. Because, when you do give a talk and the feedback afterwards makes it all worthwhile. Well, look, we've known each other for 32 or 33 years, Sam, and I look forward to seeing where your journey takes you and, and staying in touch and reminiscing, talking about the old times and enjoying the current times and building for the future. So thank you for coming in.
It's been a pleasure.
Joining me today. Okay, thank you.